Hi, everybody, and welcome back to HCD Mindset vidcast. This is part of season 2. You've seen so far, we've been interviewing some people that are at HCD, and we'll be doing some more interviews that are outside of HCD. Today in the hot seat, we actually have our very own Kathryn Ambroze. So we're going to be grilling her about a few things here, but launching right into it. Welcome back to those of you that have joined us in the past on this journey, and a big hearty welcome to those of you that are new. If you're not familiar with us, my name is Michelle Niedziela, PhD in Behavioral Neuroscience and VP of Research and Innovation at HCD Research, joined by Kathryn.
Hi everyone, my name is Kathryn Ambroze, and we'll be talking all about who I am in a moment, so I'm not going to go too much into detail,
Yes,
but happy to be here. Yeah. But let's start about, what's the HCD?
So HCD, we are a research house, first and foremost, using a variety of methodologies to really understand holistically how the consumer perceives, evaluates, and responds to different types of stimuli. Maybe it's a product or maybe it's a media communication. But basically, we use the most innovative and effective research tools to really get at those understandings of what's going on with consumers as they interact with things. We do our research worldwide, online, as well as in person. And our applied consumer neuroscience approach really covers the whole gamut of experiences that consumers have, all the way from product development, early stages, all the way through the end stages of marketing and testing, those sort of things. We use a wide variety of tools, anything from your traditional market research all the way through, neuroscience, EEG, emotional work, all those sort of things. But that's a little bit who we are. Let's move into a different topic. Let's learn a little bit about you, Kathryn. What do you do?
So I am the manager of behavioral marketing sciences at HCD. And it's kind of funny because I've been compared quite frequently to my friends as Chandler from Friends, because nobody knows exactly what my job is. And, it's funny because our job changes quite by the hour, essentially, because we do wear a bunch of hats. And
what's your elevator speech? What do you tell people when you're on an airplane and someone says, "What do you do?" What do you say?
Yeah. So basically, I mentioned that I work at a market research agency, and we do a lot of work where we help clients develop and design research experiments and ideas, and we do that with the use of not just traditional tools, but also with a little bit more fancy tools that we have in psychology that we take from, and we also take from neuroscience. But I do want to mention that while I discuss it, I always try to say that it's such an interdisciplinary thing, because it's really not just psychology, it's not just neuroscience, but it's really a marriage between quite a few different fields. And I think that's really how you make that secret sauce.
It sounded like you led with the market research part. So your elevator speech starts with the market research part. I know that I've been on an airplane before, and I was sitting next to an older woman, like someone's grandmother, and she asked me, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a neuroscientist." I led with that, and she was like, "Oh, nursing." And it was. Do you find that people understand marketing better, or do they understand if you were to lead with neuroscience?
I think if I ground it in marketing, it gives a better understanding than if I was to say neuroscience, because people's stereotypical idea of what neuroscience is very specific. I feel like it's kind of isolated in a lab messing with electrodes and like crazy scientist kind of thing. And
don't you?
I mean, sometimes you dabble in a little bit more of like the lab setting, but it is very much a human-based, human behavior-based field, especially what we do. And that's very different than, I'm not really exploring neurons ever. And I feel like that is a misconception right there. Right. So, there's, like we talk about all the time, there's levels of what we do in terms of, it's not just psychology. So, and it's not just, it's really human behavior is very much all encompassing. So to give people that grounding, I do think that we are applying, like it is applied consumer neuroscience. We're applying neuroscience to our market, and we're applying it to business and marketing. So I do try to ground it there. And then I explain how we're a little bit unique in how we approach our research.
And you've been with HCD for how long?
So it's crazy because it's coming up on 2 years, and it feels like, I'm still, I'm still learning so much. So it seems like it went by very quickly, but
Yeah.
it's been almost 2 years, and, I'm loving every minute of it. So it's been good. It's been a really fun ride so far.
Well, let's dig a little bit deeper. I see on this slide that you talk a bit about your education. I think that kind of leads where we're going with this. So let's find out a little bit about how you got from point A to point B. It wasn't a straight line.
Yeah.
You got some pictures here, but
Yes. I'll take people.
Yeah. Let's see.
So basically it all kind of started. It's funny because to go to the beginning, it was really, I thought since I was a little kid, I was going to be a dentist. Like I was, for some reason, set on being the tooth fairy. And I dressed like every Halloween. Oh yeah, it was commitment. I thought I was really set to do this. And then I went to look at, majors in college, and Muhlenberg College actually attracted me as a college because of the neuroscience major. And they split up the neuroscience major as into basically your traditional sciences that you have, which would be your chemistry, biology, physics, things like that. But then it also incorporated a segment of philosophy and psychology. So you had to take courses in that. And then in addition to that, you had you kind of choose your own adventure where you could learn a little bit more about a specific area you wanted to. And
so why Muhlenberg? Because that's not near your home.
No, it's funny because I wanted to go all the way to California, and I was reeled in, and they were like, you have to be in driving range. So I went to Muhlenberg for that, but I knew I wanted to go away. And I am an explorer by nature. So, Muhlenberg seemed like a really great fit. And I knew I wanted to study abroad. And there is a kind of a program at Muhlenberg where you can do a neuroscience major and still continue to study neuroscience and complete courses when you're in Denmark for a little bit of time. So that really was attractive to me. So I went in knowing I wanted to be a neuro major. And
so in high school,
I guess, senior year.
Why?
Because it was pre-dental neuroscience. So it fit all the requirements for the DAT, which is the dental administration test. And then I had the business minor because I was like, oh, if I want to run my own practice one day, I'll do this. So that was the groundwork, or the easy way I was able to explain it to people.
So what flipped you?
I'm sorry?
What flipped you?
So when I was going through it, I took all my courses, and I was just realizing that my interest really started, it wasn't so much in the mouth, but it was really in the overall, like I said, human behavior was something I was always intrigued about. And my labs were something that really started to be a big part of my college career. So the first lab I was in was a memory and arousal lab where we were exploring memory, and I looked at different forms of meditation to see how they would disrupt declarative memory. And there I was exposed to actually animal research, where you see right there one of our rats that we were, we fed them Fruity Pebbles to see.
That looks like a Long Evans rat, right?
It probably is. I believe so. You're good, Michelle. But yeah,
I see a picture there on the bottom. Is that a sheep brain?
It is. You're really on your game. Yeah. So the neuroscience major had a lot of exposure to different things, and but it was interesting because I still had those business classes that I was taking, and I just kept on feeling like I could combine, like there is a connection that can be made there, but there's no classes like that.
Had you heard of anything like that though? So what year was that?
So sophomore year, I joined my first lab, and I ran my research, and it was that lab that introduced me to biometrics. So we did galvanic skin response and heart rate. And we also—
what was that measuring of though? Like people doing something?
Well, so it was all, they were meditating. Okay. So it was, so
not business related.
Not business related at all. Mm-hmm. So the rat research was its own thing. that I just kind of helped out with, and I learned how to, do that with my lab. But then I broke off in my lab and I decided to look into the human behavior with the biometrics, and my mentor, Dr. Goddard, was a really big advocate for me looking into this research. So we looked into the research. It was really focused was on memory, to see how memory is affected by it. And we found interesting results where it was, you look back at the results and it wasn't what we anticipated, where heart rate was actually going up throughout certain meditations. And we're like, this doesn't make any sense. But then it actually did start to make sense. And we started putting it together and saying, okay, meditation.
More complicated than we think, right?
Exactly. Like, you are really focusing, you're really concentrating, and that's not a passive activity. You're not just sitting there closing your eyes. And so that really sparked something where I was like, this is so interesting. And as I'm doing this, I'm excited by it. And I really started to branch out, and then I went abroad. And when I went abroad, I was like, I want to really see if I can find marketing. I think I want to look into the creative, where I could maybe take from this and really educate people, but also I wanted to really find that connection.
Did you know that you wanted to work in, this is a thing about neuroscience, did you know that you wanted to work in industry, or were you thinking about taking a more academic track?
So I think I always knew I wanted industry, which was surprising, but I thought I was making it up. Like, my mom, truly to this day, again, my friends, my mom, think that like I found some crazy, some out of the way thing, especially compared to being a dentist. So right. That's like a really set path. And I felt like I was really going off on a limb on a career that may or may not exist according to all the people I've spoke to. And
sure.
While I was kind of going through this, I realized that there was a way to connect it. And it was actually my professor, Dr. Goddard, who I felt like I was getting broken up with, because she's like, I love having you in my lab, but I really think you should reach out and join this other lab, which was with my other professor, Dr. Frazier, and look into eye tracking, because I kept on pushing for more, not just biometrics, but like that psychophysiological, where we could combine the two things. I was like, there's really an opportunity there. And it started to form in my head. I finally heard the term neuromarketing, and I took a class on it. But again, I actually read the book Biology, and it was interesting because it was exciting. I was like, okay, so there's something out there. But then I was deterred, because I'm like, some of the, like, he was talking about mirror neurons, and then I had just left a class that was saying mirror neurons didn't exist. So it was,
yeah.
I was two classes, and I was like, I want clarification, but I also really want to dive further into this and really help this field grow.
I think that's, so many of those books like Biology, and by biology, we don't mean the BIO ology,
right?
We mean the BUY, like shopping,
yeah.
Biology. That book and some others, they really sensationalize it, right? They make it seem super exciting and super straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of, it's oversimplified to make it exciting, probably for more industry side people, where they're like, oh yeah, mirror neurons makes total sense. We can totally do this with shoppers, right?
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
No. And that was one of the things, is I would walk away from those classes, because it was funny, I'd have this one neuroscience class, and then I'd read immediately after it was this marketing class, where we were discussing really similar concepts, but just from different perspectives. And I think my background in science really did help me to think more critically and have that foundation of the scientific method. But it also led me to doing some research in psychology, where I really wanted to work at, I wanted to work with an eye tracker. So I found a professor that was using eye tracking. I pitched my idea because she wanted to get some funding for new eye trackers. And I said, why don't we use the college as as our stimuli, so that way we can help them and then they help us, and it becomes this really nice environment. So I went to the president of the school, and I pitched my idea and everything about how I wanted to do a test on website usability using the Muhlenberg College website. And he was all for it. So we got some of the equipment, And it was, a really eye-opening experience. I realized how much I didn't know. It was constantly this experience of learning there's so much more to understand and more to learn and more to question, because like you said, a lot of things are sensationalized. So I wanted to do it correctly. And a lot of that data, I kept questioning it because I'm like, were we controlling it enough? Like, was this done correctly? Like, is there too much on the page? And I think that's kind of what helped me shape that, again, that backing. I really wanted things to be academically sound, not just flashy. But it was exciting because speaking to that president, it helped me put the idea of consumer neuroscience and more so interdisciplinary work between departments on the field. So that way, people would speak to different departments and have, the psychology department speak to the neuroscience department, who would speak to the communications group, because they all kind of had similar perspectives on, different perspectives, but on a similar topic.
So when you were sort of pursuing this and you're kind of going along, I'm sure maybe your mom or maybe some other family members or friends may have started asking you as you're getting closer to graduation, so what are you going to do for a living?
Yeah, that was a big question. And it was, I just kind of was unsure. I was really unsure. I called it, I think I said, I was like, I'm looking into this field of, I always called it marketing. I was like, it's marketing with an emphasis on the background that I have in neuroscience. And people just kind of okayed me, it was hard to explain it all. And my backing that I always used was, I would say, worst case scenario, not even worst case, I should say, like if I don't find exactly what I'm looking for, I could always work for a company like BioPack, or I could work for a company like
the technology
within the
company.
Software side. Yeah. And that kind of eased people a little bit, because that I could explain easily. I was like, there's heart rate monitors everywhere. Yeah, exactly. So I kind of use that as my wiggle room. But yeah, so then I graduated and I went on a bunch of interviews within the industry. And I think that me doing all of those interviews kind of helped me to realize how hard it is to really break into it the way I wanted to. And
because it's still like in its, I don't want to say infancy, because it's a teenager at this point.
Yeah,
right?
it is a teenager.
Yeah. So the field is like a teenager, probably, a little over 15 years old. So it's not clear exactly how you break in, right?
Yeah. And I was really utilizing LinkedIn and reaching out to people that were in the field. I was listening to, different, anybody I could really get my hands on at that point. And that was actually how I found Glenn, was through LinkedIn. And he, and it was
very. You may want to check out Glenn's interview we did.
Yes.
Starting season 2.
Get an idea of who he is, but he is the founder and president of HCD. But so we got in contact, and in typical Glenn fashion, I hear from him, and we schedule some time to talk, and I didn't, he just didn't respond, and I was like, oh, okay, like that was fine. And then I hear from him again 2 months later, and he's like, I want you to speak to Michelle. So I was like, okay. At that point, I was really, I had interviewed, I was like on my last round of an interview at a different opportunity. And I was, like kind of going back and forth with it, but there was something, I spoke to you, Michelle, and we had just a really great conversation for mind you, it was like 2 hours. So I like took up 2 hours of this stranger's time. And I was just like, I felt like it jived right. And there was just this, again, this emphasis on education that a lot of the places I'd spoke to didn't have. And I'm really grateful for the fact that my interview process was so long while I was going, because I got a feel for who was in the field, who are the players, kind of who to watch out for, things like that. A lot of I had interviews where the interview turned into a debate, essentially, and I was not impressed. I walked away feeling frustrated.
And that's something I try to tell people a lot when they're interviewing, that it's not just you trying to get a job, right?
Right.
Because you're interviewing them as well. And if you're seeing red flags that are like, maybe they're not, being as cautious with how they're applying the tools, or you have difference in philosophy on validation, are you going to be happy if you work
Yeah,
there?
exactly. And the company culture was something that was it's easy to decipher when you're interviewing, especially when you're on a second or third interview. It felt like, like you're going on a date essentially, and you're learning about these people. And I came in for our in-person, and I met truly our whole company. Everyone, was so welcoming, and it just felt and it's funny because I really saw myself going and spending more time in Denmark and really, living there. And it was just something about the timing for working at HCD just seemed really to fit really nicely.
So we charmed you so much that you decided not to live in Denmark and that you wanted to live in Central Jersey.
Yeah, which is, saying a lot coming from a New Yorker,
Yeah.
I still get a little bit of questions, eyebrow raises.
Right.
I have never looked back because, and honestly, more than anything, as I go forward with it, the amount of opportunities that HCD just provides in general, it really just confirms that your gut does help, not necessarily your gut, but evidence that you're collecting while you're doing these interviews and you're going kind of holds true, because we do still have this academic base that we go off of, and I'm constantly
I tell people to apply to more jobs all the time, because when you're searching for jobs, apply for everything, because I feel like you really do learn something in that process, about the field, about the competition ultimately, but just also a bit about yourself too, right?
Yeah, and it was a great opportunity to really network in an odd way, where I've actually had the opportunity to reach out to people now that I'm a little bit more established in the field and share information about NeuroU. Even, it's things like that to keep this field growing. But so speaking of opportunities, we've just really had plenty of time this year, especially due to the circumstances of being.
I don't know if I would say plenty of time. I feel like we've been really busy this year.
I was going to say plenty of time to write, whereas when
2020,
you're writing
dumpster fire. Because we're all at home now, we don't have the commute that we would typically have. We have some extra time, and one thing that Kathryn and I have been able to work on quite a bit is our writing.
It's true. So, and that was a big part of why I was really intrigued and really excited with HCD, is that we, like I said, that emphasis on education, but also we are really trying to educate people that are not necessarily familiar with, with neuroscience tools. They're not really familiar with psychological tools. Yeah. And kind
There's
of
a huge problem with this teenager of a field, right? Is that there are definitely some liars and charlatans misrepresenting things, which happens with teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And so a big problem is that a lot of the methodologies aren't published, meaning that, in reputable journals. And so they're not actually being vetted out or, looked over by other experts in the field. And so, we have been pushing to really publish more and make sure all the approaches are sound and being, put on trial out there.
Yeah,
in the academic
absolutely.
space.
And I think that more than anything, these past couple of years has really taught me how to take things with a grain of salt, but also just to really critically think about everything. That term, just critically think, is constantly off the tip of my tongue, because I feel like it's such a valuable tool. And it's not necessarily just for applied consumer neuroscience, but critically think about all of the really everything, whatever you see on Facebook, whatever you see in the news, like really take time to think about it before you just take a headline and run with it. Absolutely. And that's something I've implemented into just my daily life as well as my work life.
I think that's something that you learn when you write, because when you have to teach it to someone else or explain something, you have to break it down. And when you start to break it down, sometimes it falls apart because there really isn't anything holding it up, right?
Yeah, exactly. You want that foundation to, build off of. And when you're writing these things, you have to really understand it and learn it from its base and work its way up. So
I feel like you learn a lot when you got to teach it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's true. And it's really nice that we have the chance to go out and not Not as much in person anymore, but we are still doing a lot of virtual meetups with not just students. It's great when we get to speak to the students and learn from them.
We did
ask
a
questions.
virtual class just last night.
Yeah.
Some of the team members did, we did not, but some of the other HCD team members did. In the past, we have taught. So I think the bottom right there, that is you at UPenn, right?
Yes. Yep. So I was at UPenn teaching there. The top is at, I believe it's TCNJ, but I've also given, I have the opportunity even during the quarantine just to speak to students that are at Muhlenberg, my alma mater. And it's really nice to have the opportunity to speak to students and say, there's way more out there to the neuroscience, major than just going and being a doctor, even though that's a wonderful career path. There's so much to offer in industry. And I think that's really underrepresented, not by any faults of anyone, but it's just,
I think
share more.
A lot of times people don't look back and they don't reach back to pull other people up. I think, part of our education plan at HCD is to tell people about the methodologies that are out there. But another part is sort of outreach, there's all these STEM programs that are out there, right? But I think that when we go into an undergrad class at TCNJ and explain, here's some possibilities of things you could do with what you're learning right now. Maybe you never heard of this, right?
Yeah.
I think there's something to that, like guiding people a little bit and being open to talking to other students to say, here's how you can do this. These are some of the things I ran into that were terrible. And here's, my advice on that. It's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really rewarding to be able to have the students ask you questions because it helps you redefine, reframe how you're explaining things and really understand where they're coming from. And again, you're getting all these different schools of thought that are being taught to maybe a marketing class versus a class that is a psychology class. And it helps you to really, again, use that foundation, but then continue to reframe it and learn how to reshare. So that way you are giving information that's useful and they can take it then and apply it.
And this field really only grows if more people join in, right?
So absolutely.
Having people be more aware and be interested in learning more and looking for those types of jobs, it really develops it out further.
Yeah. 100%.
So there's a lot going on with you personally on where you're going in the future.
Yeah, so it's exciting. I'm happy that HCD has been really kind in encouraging me to continue my education. So I am attending University of Pennsylvania right now. I'm part of the Masters of Behavioral and Decision Science cohort where I am, pushing those boundaries a little bit in asking the questions. And I'm really surrounding myself with peers that have similar interests, but also come from very, very different backgrounds. And that's really, again, furthering that conversation and giving me the opportunity to just advance not just what I know, but advance my questions, because it really is, I just keep having more questions and, learning more ways that we can approach trying to answer these questions has been really wonderful. So, that's one really exciting thing that's been happening. I'm thrilled that, HCD has been really awesome. We've been super busy, like you said, with a lot of things going on along with NeuroU and just trying to create content to share with people like our vidcasts. So it has been wonderful. It's been busy, but I am thrilled. I can't complain.
Yeah, I think, we're kind of building your sort of known persona in the field as well. By doing these vidcasts, we now have you as a model for doing studies that you can see there in the top. But, I think that that's important too, because that's kind of the world we live in, where you do have this persona that you do need to build that establishes you as someone in the field. Yeah,
100%. And I am a big advocate for LinkedIn as a way to connect with people that you wouldn't necessarily get the opportunity to connect with. And and I have been granted really cool opportunities through LinkedIn to speak to people that I wouldn't normally get to speak with. For example, just the other day, I spoke with somebody in a different country than me because, we're filming this in different countries, let alone, and
where in the world are you, Kathryn?
I am in London right now. I'm in the UK because
Philly suburbs of
but it's really it's incredible that people are getting more accustomed to the idea of using Zoom, so that way you can talk to individuals that are in the field that maybe you wouldn't normally get the chance to. So I'm a really big advocate for reaching out, talking to them about their research, so that way you can, as a whole, the fields can progress. And I think that's a really exciting spot.
Yeah. So, we've been doing some awesome work here, I think, with our vidcast, if I do say so myself. And I'm so glad to have everybody, and especially you, Kathryn, on this journey where we're developing, I think, very useful content for people. So I want to thank the audience that has joined us on this journey. Please, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Check out some of our last season's episodes. We're going to do some updates this season and explore more of the people at HCD and see how they got here and why. Why is a big question, right? And
why and how are the best questions. So it's really, really great. I think that if you want to join us along this ride, please feel free to. But in addition to that, Michelle also is doing a wonderful job with our webinars and really advocating for that.
Also on the channel.
Yeah, so please feel free to go explore the channel if you want more content. We also, I believe that we have plenty of other things to share. Yes, come and subscribe. We're getting fancier as we go on. And our blogs, like always, we have blogs we want to offer. Like I said, we are on LinkedIn. Connect with us, really big advocates for that. And, just reach out and let's keep talking. Let's have this conversation.
Yeah. Join us on this journey. So thank you so much, Kathryn. I'm so glad that you joined on this journey for the vidcast, but also at HCD. We are so proud of you and everything that you've accomplished. It's been really fun. And we have so much more to do. So without further ado, let's get back to work.
Sounds good.
So thank you, everybody.
Till next time.
Join us next time. Thanks.